I mean, guys, you're seeing the biggest no limit hold'em pot in online poker history. So at least in public games. So that's really cool, right? So this game is 501k 2k on GG. It's a gigantic game. I mean, the smallest stack here is 96k, so it's pretty absurd. And there's 3 blinds out there, which changes the game quite a bit, right? Compared to, let's say, regular 500, 1K or 1K, 2K ante-game. So it changes the game quite a bit. Everybody's going to be quite loose in this game. I mean, look, there's $1,200 in the pot up for grabs, right? Which means that people are going to open more, flat more, 3-bet more, 4-bet more, shove more, call more. You know, they're going to be more aggressive post-flop. The whole game just loosens up, which is a lot of fun, right? You keep out the 20 VPIP nits. I mean, you have to play a minimum of 22 VPIP, as you see Jake Schindler is doing. All right, so 10 open raises under the gun. He raises like, 2.14x or something like that. So I think that's a pretty good sizing. 2.145x would have been way too large. But anyway, so a small sizing makes sense. Just, getting into the pot for a cheap price. And because there's so much money out there, Chris Brewer has a flatting range, which is definitely correct as well. And Victor's thinking, well, Tan's going to open a lot of hands. Chris is not going to flat the super strong range, so I'm just going to squeeze for value. And so Tan knows that Wiktor doesn't need aces to squeeze here. He's going to squeeze pretty aggressively. So Tan decides to 4-bet bluff. I'm not sure if it's Tan or Tan. I'm going to call him Tan because it sounds more Chinese. So Tan ends up 4-betting and Wiktor calls. It was a pretty big 4-bet. They are a little bit deeper. So 260 to start. So 130 big blinds each. And King Jack 3 is obviously a really good board for Tan. He's going to have aces, kings, ace king. Maybe he's going to, have a hand like King Jack sometimes. He's going to have maybe a hand like pocket jacks, pocket queens. Even if he were bluffing with a hand like ace 10 suited, he's got something, right? He's got an overcard. He's got a gotcha to the nuts. He's very happy about this flop. So he decides to bet. Okay, makes sense. We're not going to do a lot of checking on this board. Some guys may not check at all on this board. And we see a 5 turn. There's 200k in the pot. Tan has 160 behind, so I think he's going to shove as his main bet size. He's got 80% pot left. Checking also makes a lot of sense. So let's see what he does. Protection now is a lot more important. If Wiktor has a hand like, ace 10 of spades, ace queen of spades, that type of stuff, Tan wants to protect his hand. Now, he also wants a slow play, right? Because Tan may have a hand like pocket queens here. He may have a hand like ace jack here. And he doesn't really want to put more money in the pot with those hands. So he can also check a hand like pocket kings, let's say, and kind of trap Wiktor and hope that Wiktor puts in more money with a bad hand. And and we see Jack 9 offsuit and ace queen. So I'm not sure which hand is more surprising. Okay, so starting with pre-flop, under the gun, Jack 9, it's a bit of a loose open, right? So Jack 10 would be quite a bit better. As I said, there's a lot of money in the pot. You have to be much looser, but Jack 9 is quite loose. Now, Wiktor's thinking, well, if these guys are so loose, I'm going to squeeze ace queen, which is perfectly acceptable, right? And then even calling the squeeze. If he believes that Tan is very loose, I mean, he clearly is, he's 4-betting Jack 9, then I can't blame him for calling or even shoving pre-flop. And then on the flop, Victor's thinking, well, I've got an overcard and not gut shot. I want to float this hand. Fine. But then on the turn, it gets a little bit wacky, right? I mean, he calls with ace queen. So, Wiktor must be thinking that Tan was bluffing with worse than ace queen. Either he had ace queen or he had a hand like ace 10 suited, ace 4 spades, whatnot. But when Tan shoves here, he can so easily have like aces, kings, ace king, king queen, jacks, all that type of stuff. So that's a pretty sick call by Wiktor, to be honest, and I don't really like it. So I like the fact that he's calling light. I mean, Tan's clearly not in the mood to fold anything at the moment. He's clearly in the mood to gamble, but ace queen is a bit much. And then Tan, okay, he c-bet the flop, whatever. I don't know. It's not the worst play in the world, but when he shoves here, he correctly identifies that he needs a lot of protection, right? Against hands like, queen 10 of spades, ace queen of spades, but this hand is pretty questionable. So now we have to rate the hand. Let's see. I'll give Tan a... I know what I gave him last time, so I have to think whether or not I'll give him the same rating. I'll give him a 0 out of 10. Yeah, I think that's the first 0 I've ever given. And I'll give Wiktor... Victor's play is definitely better than Tan's, I would say. but it's definitely questionable. So last time I gave Wiktor a 7 and a heads up play, and he messaged me on Skype and said, "Hey, why don't you give me better ratings?" And I said, "When you deserve him, in my mind, you'll get him." And then this the time after, he got a 10 right away. So I'll give him a 3. I'll give him a 3. So yeah, questionable play. Let's see who holds. Of course, Ton runs it once, $500,000 pot, no big deal. And River's a 7. Yeah, pretty sick spot. So they may not have gotten the highest grades for, quality of play, in my opinion. And maybe I'm wrong, right? But for heart, they get a 10. So yeah. So Wiktor got a 3 combined with a 10 for heart. So that averages a 6.5. I think a 6.5 is acceptable, right? So let's see. What do you guys think about this play? All right, next hand, and we've got GASTRADER in the game. GASTRADER's Bill Perkins, a very wealthy and cool businessman. I've chatted to him a few times. He's a very nice guy, in fact. So I hope he wins this pot. But then again, I like Mikita too. So let's see what happens. So GASTRADER also goes for this min raise under the gun, which I quite like. And Mikita 3-bets. Again, GASTRADER is going to open, 20+% under the gun in this spot because of the ante and whatnot. Actually, is this a different game? No, it's 5-1-2, I believe. Yeah. So he's going to raise quite wide. So Mikita's going to 3-bet wide, and GASTRADER is going to call wide. It's just a loose game, right? And you see the pot's already almost $29,000. So Mikita's going to 3-bet, C-bet here quite often. He's going to have aces, kings, ace-king a lot, hands like queens, even hands like, 6-7 suited sometimes, or 7-8 suited. Even hands like ace-5 suited still have good backdoors, or jack-10 suited, so he's doing pretty well. He actually C-bets much larger than I would have expected. And GASTRADER calls, and this is obviously a good card for GASTRADER, not so much for Mikita. GASTRADER could have hit like 6-5, 5-4, 7-8. So if he had a hand like 7s, he now has an open-ender, so he doesn't hate this card. And Nikita bets around 2/3 pot. And GASTRADER's check raises here. I'm not sure if that timing was identical to the actual timing in the game, but that was a pretty quick check raise to a lot of money, so maybe GASTRADER's bluffing. He's taking a hand like 6-7 and check raise bluffing, and then, he would just call it off against ace-king and easily have enough equity. But, it's a pretty scary spot. So when he quickly check raises here, I would say he's usually pretty strong. It's also not a play you see everybody make, right? Just check raise here with like pocket 7s or 6-7, just looking to get aces to fold. So Mikita's in a tough spot. If he wants to go with his hand, he has to put in the last 13 bigs, right? So it would be a shame if he then folded on the river. Or if, let's say, GASTRADER has 7s and he kind of, gets to make that play and he doesn't, he gets a bit of a discount. So Mikita should either shove or fold in my mind, at least. Well, yeah, he should shove or fold. Drum roll. And I don't think Mikita's going to fold. So if Mikita shoves here, he must think that GASTRADER doesn't only have like sets of 5s and 6-5, but that he also has hands like 6-7, that type of stuff. Maybe like 5-7. And Mikita's king, queen of hearts. 3-bet is standard, C-bet is standard, turn bet is a little bit looser, but he knows that Bill Perkins probably doesn't have ace-king very often, so unless he hits something around the 4, 5, 6 region, he is ahead most of the time. So, betting again is the standard play, I guess. But then when it gets shoved on, basically, it's a really ugly spot, and Bill Perkins actually has deuce 3 suited. That may be the biggest pot ever won with deuce 3 suited, right? I mean, when was the last time you saw a bigger one? I've seen a bigger one with 7 deuce, but not deuce 3. So, and yeah, obviously he's dead, so rip. As for the play, I think Mikita, could he have folded the turn? Maybe. I'll give him a 7.5 out of 10. As for Bill, the pre-flop play, the pre-flop play is quite loose. I'll give him a 6. So that play is definitely quite loose, but he got all the money in, and he made Mikita believe that one pair of kings is good, where he easily could have been dead, and he was. So Christopher Brewer, who is an American or Canadian reg, I believe, raises in the small blind to 3.5 blinds, which is a fine sizing. Standard would be 3x, but there's 2 people behind you. There's also an ante out there, which changes the game a little bit. And, you know, Wiktor obviously knows that Chris is still going to raise a, you know, somewhat wide range, so he attacks him. I think this is the infamous hand. Yeah, I think it is. So I remember railing this one. So, you know, again, loose dynamic, right? Chris opens a lot, Wiktor's going to 3-bet a lot, and Chris is therefore going to 4-bet a lot. So he doesn't need aces to 4-bet here. Well, if he did have aces, he's got a pretty sweet spot now. Ace, queen, 3. Obviously, a really good spot for Chris because he's going to have aces and queens and maybe ace, queen, and ace, king. And even if he's 4-bet bluffing, right? A lot of those 4-bet bluffs could be hands like ace, 10 off or like ace, 7 suited or ace, 3 suited. So even a hand like kings, you know, it's not loving his board, but it's not hating it. So yeah, great spot for Chris. He's going to bet very aggressively. I mean, there's less than 2x pot behind. I like it. So he bets, and eventually we see a 5 turn. The 5 is not that relevant of a card. I guess both players could have ace-5 suited, perhaps. Maybe a 4-5 suited improves to a pair for Wiktor, but other than that, the 5 doesn't help much. Wiktor now bets small, and even though he bets small, he's representing a pretty polarized range. I mean, by the time Chris calls, the pot's going to be around 200, you know, almost 240k, and Wiktor will have 130 behind, right? So he's representing a very strong hand at this point. The 4 probably shouldn't matter. 6, 7 of clubs gets there in Wiktor's shoes, I guess. That's one hand. You know, and then maybe Wiktor has a hand like 5-4 for 2 pairs sometimes. You know, maybe a hand like ace-4. So on paper, it shouldn't matter. But we know that Wiktor doesn't give a shit about paper. So let's see what Wiktor does. Wiktor shoves here. And, you know, Chris is thinking, well, I'm getting a pretty good price. So if I have a good hand, I probably got to call. I don't want to block Wiktor's bluffs here. You know, Wiktor's bluffs mostly are hands like King Jack, you know, King 10, Jack 10, club draws, stuff like that. So Chris does make the call. Amazing, amazing. And Wiktor has the 7 deuce suited. Amazing. So that must be the biggest pot ever won with 7 deuce in a public game at least. So that's amazing. So I mean, obviously this is a fuck you play by Wiktor. You know, he's just gambling. He's having fun. But you know, I would have liked to see Chris on camera at that point. I don't know what he looks like, but it would have been a funny face, right? As in, he opens pre, good play. He 4-bet against a loose 3-betting range. Good play. He c-bets flop, check calls turn, calls down. I mean, Chris lost the hand, but I'll give him a 9.5 out of 10. I don't see what he did wrong. Maybe he could have folded river. You know, it's not a great spot to be in, but Wiktor's definitely aggressive enough for ace 10 to be considered, you know, as a calling hand. So yeah, Chris played his hand well. I mean, Wiktor's going to get at least a 5 because he gets a 10 for heart. I'll give him a 4 out of 10 for his play and a 10 for heart. So he gets a 7 overall. So yeah, but guys, I mean, heart matters more than the actual quality of the play. So, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a plus EV play. You know, maybe Wiktor's got some kind of prop bet going on with some kind of really rich guy, and because of that, he made a bit of extra money, right? So maybe he's the only one playing the 7 deuce game, and because of that, he made extra money. I wouldn't be shocked if Wiktor's play, you know, including that EV, was like a 10. So yeah. Shout out to Wiktor. Great play. All right, next hand. So, Ton raises. Same funky sizing again, which I still like. This time he raised from middle position. And Chris is going to 3-bet very aggressively here, but not this time. So, Almedin makes it 21k to go. I think that's a, you know, decent sizing. Hello, Wiktor. I'm waving, but you guys can't see. And, you know, Ton is very deep in position, so he's going to 4-bet aggressively, but he's also going to call a lot, right? I mean, he's going to do way more calling than 4-betting. He's in position, super deep. On a board like this, he's now going to hit for like 5-4 and 5-6 and ace-5 and 9s and maybe even like 5-7 type of hands or even king-5 type of hands. He's going to have a couple of overpairs. But then again, Almedin's doing all right himself. So Almedin thinks, well, this board is quite dry, not that much happening, so I'm just going to c-bet the third pot here. And Ton raises him pretty large, in fact. He goes to like, 3.5x. So he definitely wants to have a raising range here. When you're a bit shorter, just being passive makes more sense. But you definitely want to attack here, right? You're deep stacked. You want to utilize your position. You want to utilize that pocket nines and five and all those fives and go ahead and have some raises. So I like this, assuming obviously the hand makes sense, right? So if he has deuce 3 offsuit, no, I do not like it. But he should definitely have some raises. Let's see what Almedin does. Almedin might put Ton on a hand like 6-7 or a hand like Jack-10 as a bluff. Maybe even puts him on a hand like 7s and thinks, yeah, he's ahead obviously with a hand like aces. The Jack definitely changes things because, obviously a lot of the Jack-10 type of bluffs get there. Almedin now has some flush draws sometimes. He could have hit pocket jacks, so definitely, it's a card that hits both of them quite well. So Ton decides to bet here, and I wonder whether or not he would bet a hand like Jack-10 for 100k. Well, he's definitely not betting the river anymore. 8 of spades, 6-7 of spades gets there. I don't think Ton ever has pocket 8s here. He might raise the flop sometimes, but he's not going to bet the turn for 100k. So Ton's representing, can he even shove with a 5 here? He's representing at least a 5 at this point if he does shove, at least for value that would be. But of course he could be bluffing. He's a good player, and he's not money scared. Snap call. That's not what you want to see, right? If you're Ton and you shove like ace-5 of clubs, the last thing you want to see is a snap call. You just know you never win. So Ton shows up with 9-7, which is pretty loose. And Almedin has ace-king of spades. Wow, okay. Very interesting play. And I believe this is the biggest pot in online poker history, at least in public games. There's some private app games where the game, the stakes are much higher. So I've seen a thing or two about that. The games do get bigger there, but this game is almost $1 million, right? The pot's almost $1 million. So okay, Almedin 3-bet pre, good. Not even decent, good. He c-bet the flop, okay, fine. He called the raise, fine. I don't think you should fold against fold to the flop raise. And then on the turn, he's thinking, well, I still unblock hands like 7-8. Queen 10 that he could be bluffing with, some kind of random hand. I call, I have 2 overs and a flush draw. And on the river, he could be behind against a full house, but he's, you're not calling it flop to then hit a backdoor nut flush to then fold against reasonable action, right? So that would be a bit unreasonable to you call to hit a flush draw, you hit your flush, a safe flush card, and then you fold. So, okay, easy call, It is a tough spot to find bluffs in Ton's spot, but he did find a bluff here. So he called 9-7 pre, especially deep, okay. It's loose, but it's fine. And then he actually turned his hand into a bluff, which is very creative but interesting. So, he raised the flop, which is fine. But then on the turn, generally checking behind is the play. You as you see here, you're still ahead a decent amount of the time, right? Against pocket 8s, or ace-king, or ace-queen. And, if Almedin had an overpair like pocket queens, I don't think he's going to fold anyway. So, yeah, you're not really getting many better hands to fold. You're not getting many worse hands to call, even though he happened to get this one to call. So I think checking back to turn would have been better. And on the river, very, very clever play. He sees, well, 6-7 gets there, my flushes get there, my queen 10s get there, my everything gets there. I still have some 5x and full houses to begin with. I don't have a worse hand than this, right? I probably don't. This is the bottom of my range. I block pocket 9, so I block one of the hands he snap calls with. I'm going to bluff. So, yeah, very interesting play. So I'll give Almedin I'll give him a 9 out of 10. I think his play was very good. There's one little thing I might have changed, but okay, his play is very good. And I give 10. I like the pre-flop call. I don't mind the flop raise. I love the turn. I love the river shove. Right, it's a really smart shove, but I don't like the turn bet so much. Right, once you get to the river, the pot's big. You're not really winning anymore. Right, you cannot just expect to check down and beat ace king high. Right, can't really expect that. So I like the shove, but I don't really like the turn bet. I don't think you need to bluff this hand. It's a bit too strong. So I'll give I'll give him an 8 out of 10. I like the fact that he's pressuring guys. He knows that these guys are playing for a lot of money, and Ton is probably way richer, so he's putting these guys to the test. So that I definitely like. So yeah, guys, you're seeing the biggest no limit hold'em pot in online poker history. So at least in public games. So that's really cool, right? I know we're kind of used to it at this point with all these big games running, but this is really cool. So yeah, nice hand.